I've never heard of one person only ever going to one food blog and that's it, and they never go on to anyone else's. So there's enough room for everyone, and you'll never harm yourself by helping someone else.
That was Cassie Heilbron, and this is episode number 194 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Chopped Podcast. I'm Marley McMillan, and I am your host. So recently I had a conversation with a friend who told me something like this. It was like the first time that she could remember having a family dinner at home every day, so many days in a row. No soccer practice or after school events, play dates, none of it. Just simply family time. And I just thought, there's so much that's so bad about this pandemic, obviously. But there are some things about it that I hope that we can hold on to. More time with family? Yes, absolutely. I also read that there's a city in India where they can now see the Himalayan mountains for the first time in like 30 years because of the lack of smog. I have friends who are now working from home and loving it. The hole in the ozone is healing. I've also even read that spam phone calls are down because of the pandemic. Hallelujah, right? I love these stories. I just wish it didn't take a pandemic for these kinds of great things to happen. I just wonder if there's a way to continue the momentum of these kind of what I call silver lining moments. I'm not sure, but I sure hope so. I read an article in The Atlantic called How the Pandemic Will End, and it's a great article. I'm going to leave a link in the show notes page so that you can read it too. There's one part of this article that really resonated with me. Here's what the author said. There are now only two groups of Americans, although we can apply this to anybody in the world. There are only now two groups of people. Group A includes everyone involved in the medical response, whether that's treating patients, running tests, or manufacturing supplies. Group B includes everyone else, and their job is to buy Group A more time. Group B must now, quote, flatten the curve, end quote, by physically isolating themselves from other people to cut off the chains of transmission. I feel like I get to play a huge role in Group B. In fact, I call myself a human bee. You get it? Human being, human bee. So it may seem kind of lame if you think about it. You're at home lounging around watching Netflix or whatever. But this article suggests that the best thing that I can do is participate in physically isolating myself and helping others to do that. That's what I do. That's what we do as food bloggers, right? We're helping other people be able to cook from home or do these things from home that helps them stay physically isolated. I don't know. I feel kind of enthusiastic about that. And that part makes me feel encouraged and excited. And I don't know about you, but it's nice to have something to feel excited about. So I'm still creating new recipes. My husband, Sean, and I, we shoot them together. For us, it's kind of like the same old routine that we're on, except that I'm not running up to the store for a quick run to get a fresh tomato to shoot with or things like that. But we're making do. And I'm lucky to have fresh herbs growing at home. And I sprinkle some fresh parsley, on whatever dish I'm shooting. A sprinkle of some chopped fresh parsley over a dish can really add a lot to it. So I'm just saying, I know that there's a lot going on, and I'm not trying to downplay that at all. I'm just trying to say finding ways that I can be excited about my work feels really good. And I feel good about being a part of Human Bee, and helping other people to do that as well feels really good. Of course, I also know there are a lot of distractions and just pure raw emotions from everything that we're reading and going through and seeing. Every day it feels like something happens that just causes me to almost come to tears. And I don't know if that you feel that way as well, but I think that's probably just part of these raw emotions that we're going through. It's really hard. I think a lot of us are experiencing this inability to go see our parents. And for me, I just am pretending that I live in a different state from my mom, and that makes it easier. I FaceTime her. We were able to see each other, but I can't see her in person right now. So I just play these little tricks with myself to help me get through that. I also listened to the podcast, The Happiness Lab. It's by Dr. Laurie Santos. It is amazing. I love her advice on how to deal with the pandemic. And she talks about the importance of having compassion for ourselves. And, these are trying times, and this is not always business as usual. And so she suggests to find ways to be productive where you can, to do things like you would expect, like meditation and exercise, but also to find some ways just to be compassionate with yourself and to help yourself realize that there are going to be times when you're not as productive as you want to be, and that's okay. And it's all about finding the balance to help you get through this. We're all going through this, in fact, in different ways, of course, but one thing I know is that we can be there for each other. In fact, it's one way that I hope that this podcast helps, is because it creates a sense of normalcy about the work that we're doing. Think of it this way: your audience needs you now more than ever. So if you can listen to today's episode and feel inspired for the work you need to do, well, that's amazing. And it makes me feel so proud to be a part of that. So speaking of that, let's talk about today's show, because today I am talking with Cassie Heilbron. She's of the site Cook It Real Good. I mean, I get to say that name all day long. I love her blog name, Cook It Real Good. And Cassie is sharing about her passion for food and how that caused her to start of the food blog in the first place. But she also talks about rebranding her site and how it was such a scary thing to go through, but it's really paid off for her. But she reached out to other food bloggers to help her through this process. And I think the name of the site had a big impact on her. And so that going through that has really helped her a lot. But it was the advice from other food bloggers that really kind of helped her get through that, which I think is important. So we're talking about loving your style. And I think that's just so important. And she doesn't say this explicitly. You have to kind of read between the lines in what Cassie's talking about, but she alludes to it when she's talking about discovering her photography style. She also mentions her style in the way that she blogs too, and even about the way she shares on social. So there's all these kind of messages out there about how we should do things, or maybe we see a feature of another food blogger or another blogger or influencer, and we think that the way they're doing things looks great, and I wish I could do it that way, that kind of thing. A comparison is the thief of joy. We've all heard that, and it's just so true. And Cassie is here to remind us all that finding the way you do things is what matters. And I can tell you how I do things, and Cassie can tell you about how she does things. But in the end, you have to find what resonates with you. And this is the message that Cassie's sharing today. And I love it. It's such a great conversation, and one that will fill you with lots of inspiration and joy. So let's get straight to it. Here's today's featured conversation with Cassie Heilbron. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have on the show today Cassie Heilbron. She's with the site Cook It Real Good. Welcome to the Chop Podcast, Cassie.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks, Marley.
I am so excited to be able to talk with you today. I think we're going to have a great conversation about food blogging and all the good stuff.
Absolutely. Definitely.
Yeah. I always love to start with asking people what it was that caused you to basically start your blog.
It's a good question. I feel like it was so long ago now, but I'm still like a bit of a newbie blogger, I guess. I'm just coming up to 3 years now, but it feels like such a long time ago, and it's like all-consuming blogging, I guess. But I guess I was consuming a lot of food blogs. I was a huge fan, and that sort of inspired me on my own cooking journey to learn how to cook better and create healthier meals for myself. And from there, I thought, maybe I could do this. And I was also looking for a bit of a creative outlet. I was in a job that I wasn't very happy with and kind of felt a bit stifled creatively. So yeah, that was sort of a good opportunity for me to focus on something else that I could enjoy.
I love this story, Cassie, because I've been listening to, I don't know if you know who Mel Robbins is. She's kind of like one of the self-help kind of author and speaker. And she talks about how important it is to follow your energy. And I think the fact that you were interested in food blogging was a really good indication. And then you followed that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I was spending hours and hours at the job that I didn't enjoy reading food blogs. So that was probably a good indication that I enjoyed it.
Yes, exactly. And so you weren't involved in cooking a lot at that time, but that you kind of developed the passion for it then?
Yeah, so I was sort of like in my mid-20s, and I had cooked like a few meals that I had like, I guess, in my repertoire, but I wasn't very experimental. I wasn't very confident in winging it and things like those. And then, yeah, as I started getting more into cooking some different recipes and trying out different things. That's sort of where my passion for cooking grew.
I'm curious about, you don't have to name any names unless you want to, but the food blogs that you were following, were they people just like you, the ones that, I mean, like, it seems to me like there are some food bloggers who are professionally trained chefs, and then there are some food bloggers who are, just like you and me, who kind of developed this passion for food and decided to start a food blog. Is that, which ones are the ones that, I don't know, like piqued your interest the most?
Yeah, definitely the home cooks, or the people who,
Yes.
had clearly, like, they were very talented, but
Yes.
I don't know, there's something about that tinkering away in your own kitchen that's pretty special. And I think also I always loved people's family recipes that had been handed down, and they're the good stuff. I really like that.
Do you have those too, those family recipes?
Definitely. I have a couple on my blog, and they're special. They're the ones that, that when you eat it, you just get all these memories of beautiful family times. And that's what I really enjoy.
Yeah, my family had the funniest recipe. We called it creamed eggs on toast. It's so ridiculous, but my mom would make toast and then she would make this white gravy. And I don't eat eggs now, but she would do hard-boiled eggs and she would slice the egg whites after they were cooked and then top it off with egg, the crumbled cooked egg yolk. And that was like a really special treat for us.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds really nice.
Yeah, it was not, a simple country. We lived in a very, very small town, so simple dish, but it was kind of like a thing, I never heard anybody else talk about this recipe, so I feel like it's a family thing.
Yeah, there's some like that where you go, like, does anybody else do this?
Yes, exactly. Right. It's probably not good for SEO to do that, but I can see from time to time doing a recipe like that is just fun,
We, my family, we have something that we call salmon rissoles, which is kind of like, I guess, fish cakes with the mashed potato. But we actually make them with tuna, but we always call them salmon. I have no idea why. I've never thought it was strange until I met my husband, and he was like, "What is this? why don't you just call it tuna rissoles?" I was like, "No." And so yeah, I probably couldn't put that on my blog because it wouldn't make much sense.
It wouldn't make any sense.
But it is one of those funny family things that every time I eat it now, I'm like, why do we do this?
That's funny because if I, since I'm vegan now, if I was going to remake my family recipe, I would call it creamed eggs on toast, but it's not eggs. So I'd be in the same boat. Yeah, exactly. It's still, like you say, there's just some meaning behind those recipes, and it's fun to recreate them and share them with people. So that's cool.
Yeah, and you'll find like some people have actually had the same food as you, and that's even more special. Like you go, oh, you know what this is.
Yeah, exactly. That's really cool. Okay, so I'm just curious. I always like to talk to people about their photography skills and how that worked out for you. Like when you first started your food blog, I think a lot of us have a tendency to think, oh, food photography is going to be so easy. Did you already have some photography skills when you went into food blogging, or is that something you had to develop over time?
I absolutely had no photography skills. I did not consider myself even like a decent iPhone photographer. My husband had like a really good DSLR and he had a passion for photography. He really liked taking like star shots and things like that of the night sky. And so that was really handy because he kind of already had the tool that I needed to start.
Yeah.
So I kind of just got it out. I think I got Minimalist Baker's photography course at the time with the videos, and just started to learn what is aperture, everything, and playing around with it. But my first year of photos was atrocious, and I've definitely replaced all of those on the blog now, and I never want to look back at them.
Right. So there's definitely quite a learning curve with food photography. Like I say, I think it looks like something that's so simple, and yet it's really hard.
I think the thing that I've learned on my own journey with photography is that there's some things that I guess as I continue to evolve in my photography, I might get better at, but at the moment I'm not there. And so I don't really worry about it. I think before I was really like trying to set up a whole styled shot and everything like that, and it just wasn't really working for me. Whereas now I really just try and focus on the dish at hand, taking clear, crisp photos, and that seems to work out really well for me.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line, isn't there, between those highly styled photos and the ones that people just really relate to because they feel like they could make it themselves too.
Yeah, and I talk to people about that sometimes as well because, I mean, let's be honest. We've seen lots and lots of food blogs be really successful with mediocre food photography, and there's nothing wrong
Mm,
with that. But
no.
I think the thing is, it is accessible. People at home want to know, can I make this? And if they see, I find it with baking, I get really intimidated by these like absolutely beautifully styled layered cakes. Like I could never make that because I'm not that way inclined.
Yes.
But if I see, a nice slice of a chocolate cake, I would think like I could make that, definitely.
Yes, exactly. So your photography can be a little bit like you. It can be an approachable thing and it makes people feel like they want to make it. So that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So was there, okay, so let me just get the timeline straight because you started your food blog, 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
When was the time in that journey that you started to realize like, okay, I love this and I think I can actually make this work?
I think it was always the goal. I didn't start it off as a hobby. I started off as I want this to be something. So that was really the driving force behind it. But having said that, there was definitely a long time where it was crickets and very slow growth and lots of tears going, why am I not getting anywhere? And it probably was in the last year that I started to understand SEO. It really took me a long time to get my head around it. And even still today, I still learn things and go, oh, light bulb, that's finally making sense. You start to understand socials a bit better. I'm not a genius in any way, but you start to see what works for you, what works for your audience, and you start to grow through there. And that's sort of where I've found growth happening and thinking, yes, this can definitely be something.
Yeah, I think that's a great story because I kind of smile as I listen to you talk because did you actually really start your blog 3 years ago?
Yes.
So, I mean, in reality, you're picking up on this stuff pretty quickly, whereas, people who have been blogging for 10 years or so might be listening to this, feeling the same way. Like, hey, I'm still trying to figure out these things out too. So it's interesting how we can be in different parts of the spectrum and be feeling the same way.
I think the lucky thing that we have these days is that there is actually like so much information there. I imagine if you
Yes.
started your blog 10 years ago, there would have hardly been anything. Whereas
Right.
these
That's
days, like we
correct.
have helpful Facebook groups where people are giving you information. We have helpful courses that you can take that are affordable, all these things that you go, once upon a time, you would have been stabbing in the dark trying to figure these things out.
Yes. And the people who are doing very well might not have, shared too much about what it was that helped them do so well. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like today there's a lot more sharing that goes on, which is really great.
Definitely. I think people kind of finally figured out that you helping someone else doesn't dampen your success. I've never heard of one person only ever going to one food blog and that's it. And they never go on to anyone else's. So there's
Yes.
enough room for everyone and you'll never harm yourself by helping someone else.
I see. I love this attitude. In fact, early on in my food blogging, I went to some food blogging conferences, and the attitude then was quite a bit different. And it was like you're the cool kids, and they've got all the traffic and doing really well, and the rest of you are not cool. And it just I've talked to several people who've left the same way, feeling like in tears. Like you said, there's a lot of tears involved in growth, I think.
Definitely.
Yes. So I'm really glad that we're in this spot where we all share more with each other. I think it feels very genuine, and it's just it's a very collaborative process.
I think part of it as well is, and this has just been in my own journey, is actually asking for help or asking the question. I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's been a bit of a game changer for me. I think I used to just sit in silence and just think, oh, I'm the only person going through this, or, I'll never know the answer to this. But the more that you reach out to people, you find that the answer is always, yes, I can help you. Yes, this is how you go, whether it is in those food groups or whether it's, to someone directly. You find that you very rarely will you have someone slam the door in your face. You'll more often than not have someone help you.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what that looks like for you. So let's say you're having an issue and you don't know exactly how to proceed. You can obviously asking questions in a Facebook group that's dedicated to food bloggers is kind of an easy way to do that. But it sounds like sometimes you reach out individually to food bloggers. What does that look like?
I'll give you an example. So I rebranded this year. My blog used to be called Be Forever Healthier. Ugh, horrible name. And now it's Cook It Real Good. And before I embarked on that journey, I actually sought out people who had already gone through it because they would be the best people to ask.
Right.
And so, the Sarah Cook from Sustainable
Yes.
Cook, she was one of the first people that I emailed and was like, what do I do? And now I'm great friends with Sarah, all because I
She's
emailed her and asked
wonderful.
her for help. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was other people as well. I knew a girl who also blogs in Australia, and I reached out to her and she gave me some great advice. So yeah, if you find people who've already walked the path that you're going, that's a great idea of someone to ask a question of.
I think it probably is good that you had a very specific question. I could see if you
Definitely.
reached out to somebody and said, how do I grow my traffic, or something very generic like that, it would be different. But I think the fact that you asked a very specific question is probably helpful.
Yeah, and I guess to your point, you don't have to go to someone and be like, hand me a whole playbook.
Yes.
They're
Give
probably
me a
not going
recipe.
to do that. But
Yes.
having said that, if you just naturally start up a conversation with someone,
Yeah.
those things can come out anyway. Like, I've had a lot of people reach out to me when they've heard like me on a podcast or something and just be like, I really, really resonated with that, even though I'm not planning to do this. This is why it helped me. And then you continue having a conversation and then they might ask you something about keywords and it just goes from there. So you don't have to shoot from the hip and be like, how do I do this? But you could try start up friendships that can be valuable from there.
I love this conversation because I do think it's very easy to build up other people as, like maybe we might think that they're busy or that they would have some reason to not want to help us. And I think the more that we can, first of all, be vulnerable and ask questions and ask for help, I think that's really important.
Yeah, and everyone's been where you are. So,
Yes. Yes.
even it's hard to believe, but even those really, really big people once upon a time had struggles and didn't understand things and they had people help them. So, yeah,
Right.
I don't think it's the big scaries. And, if someone doesn't have time to help you, that's fine. But, I think more often than not, you'll find that you'll never be in a bad position from trying to strike up a conversation with a fellow food blogger.
Yes, exactly. So you started your blog, with the goal of it being a professional blog. And did you have the hope that someday it would be your full-time income and you would be able to quit your job?
Definitely. I actually was in a bit of a unique position at the time because I did quit my job.
Oh, good for you.
I was just so miserable, and my husband was starting a business, so I was able to do some work for him, and that facilitated me from being able to work from home. So yes, that was very lucky.
Yes.
But the blog definitely wasn't bringing me income for a very long time. So
Oh, right.
probably wouldn't be my advice to just quit the job and go for it.
Yes.
But,
Although, there's advantages to that, right? Like, I mean, my daughter is a musician to be. I mean, she is a musician, and she is she is reading a book right now on how to become a professional musician independently. And one of the advice from the book was, don't have a fallback career. Just be all in.
Yeah.
That's interesting,
Definitely.
isn't it? Yeah.
I see it sometimes in advice and like from, I mean, probably not Mel Robbins, but that kind of thing is like, if you're going to go into your passion, go all in.
Yeah.
And definitely, if you can, but I would never want someone to be in a bad position. And it's not that I think that it's not going to work out for you. I just think that it does take time, unfortunately.
Yes.
And then these bills keep coming in, pesky things. But you're right. Because if at first, if you're working full time and you only have a couple of hours to give to your blog a week, it's going to be slow growing. Whereas if you are able to actually put all your time and effort into it, you're right. Things can actually start turning over more quickly.
Yeah. And then I do want to stress on the opposite side of the spectrum is Elizabeth Gilbert with her book, Big Magic, who said, don't quit your job because you put too much pressure on your art. like if you want to be a writer or whatever, she's like, you don't want to put the pressure on that art. You want to let it live and breathe and grow organically. So there's two ends of a spectrum here. And I agree with you. I think people have to just decide, where are they? What can they afford to do? So yeah, you were just in a lucky position that kind of circumstances helped you make that decision sooner.
Yeah, it all kind of happened at the right time, which was great.
I love that. And so, I mean, I know that there's got to be times that you felt the struggle and felt the, I mean, like you see other people, it feels like they're making it, and did you feel that struggle at times?
100%. Like one specific memory comes to mind. I mean, like I said, there's been a lot of tears over the years, but I remember one day I was in one of those Facebook food groups, and someone was reaching out saying they were having trouble with traffic, and sort of where they were and how long they'd been blogging was about the same as what I was at the time. And it was not very much, like whatever it was, a couple of thousand a month for views or something.
Yeah.
And someone in there had been like, well, I've been blogging for a year and I've got like 100,000 views or something. And I'm like, what? I spent the rest of the day like, I'm never going to be anything. I can't do it. That kind of stuff. And, now I look at it, I think that's so silly, but it was very real at the time. I was like, why is this not working for me? I feel like I'm doing everything right.
Yes.
And so, yeah, there's been a lot of those type of moments. So if you've been there, I feel you.
Yes, exactly. It's very painful. And honestly, it's very tempting just to give in and quit, right?
Definitely. You're like, this isn't going to work for me. I don't know. And I think that also blogging is very personal. I know some people are able to remove themselves from their blog and have it be very just informational, and that's great. But I put a lot of myself into my blog, not my preamble. I don't write 6 paragraphs about me, but I do put myself into my blog, and so you kind of feel that when there is crickets at the start, like, oh, is it me? Do people not like me and what I'm doing?
Well, I think there is. I've kind of had this tendency to think that somebody else who's doing very well just has these skills or these natural talents that I don't have. So therefore, that's why they're doing so much better. Not to recognize that actually these are all skills that we can all learn,
Definitely.
Yeah.
And like the comparison trap is just so alluring, but it's not really ever going to get you anywhere. And also you've just got to understand that people are coming from different spots. Like you said, like there's people who will have come from a marketing background who probably really understand all the socials, and so they can grow very quickly. Or there might be people who have a really big support network already that they tap into when they start. So everyone's starting from a different position. So you can't really compare apples to apples. You can only, like you said, you can get those skills. You just have to work for them.
Yeah, I like to think of comparison. If I get in that comparison loop, I think it's a gateway drug to imposter syndrome, or to quitting or whatever. You just think, everybody else has got their thing figured out, but not me. It's terrible.
It's how it feels. Like you think, oh gosh, everyone seems to have this magic formula, and I'm missing it.
Yes, especially on Instagram. I feel like that's the worst. That's where everything just feels like it's perfect.
Yeah, I've definitely had more than a few crises over Instagram. I've gotten to the point now where I'm just over it.
Yeah, me too.
I really like Instagram as a user. I like to make stories and stuff during the day and have fun with it, but I'm so over the following game. It's like, whatever. If a brand doesn't want to work with me, that's fine.
Yeah,
I'm more interested in getting traffic to my blog. It's not equating dollars for me there.
Right. And I also just feel like, I don't know, if somebody else's got a beautiful living room or beautiful house or the greatest kitchen in the world, I just feel like, well, that's them. I'm really happy with my space. And I think that's really all you can do is you can be in control of what you have. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. And you have to find what's important to you as well. So yeah, it's always nice to have like picture perfect things, but yes, I think probably this kind of resonates with me at the moment because we just come back from overseas holiday, and I think that those type of things can sometimes be like on social media. You see everyone's like picture perfect holiday, that they're having a great time. And my husband really tries to share the not so great parts, which cracks me up. But sometimes like whenever you go on holiday, it's never going to be 100% perfect, chilled, relaxed. And we definitely had some like hairy moments during the whole thing. So it was, I just think like keep it real if you can. Like not everyone, it's not always going to be perfection.
I mean, you have real in the name of your site, right?
Yes, it has to be real. And like that includes like your food failures and things like that. People like to know that you're a real person.
I can tell you there have been many times when I've been making a cake and I realized that I left out the sugar.
Oh no.
Yeah, yep, there's no sugar in that cake.
Oh no. Yes, you can taste it straight away, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. And my sweet husband will eat it anyway, but I just put a little extra frosting on it and he's good with it.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. That'll like a whole lot of like jam or something.
That's right. Yeah. But I'm curious if, the name of your site, how you came up with Cook It Real Good. That's a good name.
Oh, it was pretty funny story.
Is it?
Yeah. So my husband and I got married last year. We were on our honeymoon, sitting in bed in the Maldives and looking out on our beautiful view. And I'm like, I need to rebrand. We need to come up with a name. Let's do it. So we spent like a couple of hours just like back and forth. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And like, I just love puns. I'm all up for that. Or, like I love 90s and 80s music. And so I'm just like trying to come up with everything I can and play on words. And yeah, it just popped into my head and I was like, that's the one. And I was so happy when the domain was free. And yeah, it just went from there. And I'm so happy with it. Whereas before, I think that I've read a lot about you and resonating with names as well, Marley. And my old name was not for me. I didn't like it from day one. It just felt embarrassing to me. So this was just like life-changing for my blog and how I felt about it. And I felt really proud of it. And yeah, it's just gone from there.
Yeah, I think you have to feel very confident and good about the name. It's like such a, important part of it,
Exactly.
So I'm just curious if the Devo song didn't have anything to do with it, Whip It,
Mine was Push It, the Salt and Pepper song. Yeah.
I don't know why. Every time I hear that song, Whip It, I always think, they say whip it good, but I always think they should be saying whip it real good. And so that's why when I saw your slide, Cook It Real Good, that's why it made me think of that.
No, it's another good one. Yeah, it definitely fits. But yeah, no, that's the Push It was where I got it from. I was like, push it real good. Oh yeah.
That's probably where I got that then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Push it real good. Yeah. Oh, that's a great song. Yes. I love it. So, anything that's inspired by 80s and 90s music is good with me.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan.
Me too. And so now you feel inspired and like you're like taking things to another level altogether.
That's how it's felt. Like it felt like the name changed and then from there it's been growth and I feel like lots more people are connecting with the I guess brand, I want to say, but like I just find that I've had lots more engagement since I've changed my name, and part of that could be the name, but part of that could just be my confidence and moving forward too.
Yes. Confidence is really important, but I also was just sitting here thinking, like, it's so easy for us to sit here and talk about this, about, kind of like in retrospect, how great this was, a great decision. But I'm sure in the moment when you're doing the rebranding and think, you talked about some big steps that you took as a part of that had to be pretty scary at times.
100%. I had actually just qualified for Mediavine before I wanted to go through the rebrand. And so I had, Mediavine letting me know that this probably wasn't the best thing for me to do, which is understandable because they don't know what your traffic will be like at the end of it. I had, lots of people saying to me like, oh, your traffic may never recover. And that was scary because it took me like 2 and a bit years to get to the point where I qualified for Mediavine. So to think that process could take another amount of that time was just daunting. And, I had some nice rankings that were coming up. that I was, in the top 3 spots for, that I had a decent hit rate. That was really good. So yeah, it was really scary to go back to 0. And it really does. Like after you change, about 2 weeks after you change, you completely out of Google. Not one of my recipes was on Google. And that was like a very uncomfortable feeling, but
I bet. But you also have the experience of knowing what it took to get there in the first place. So you have an easier time of doing it the next time around.
Exactly. Well, actually, it didn't really take that long to come back. So
nice.
I had, obviously technical help and people, professionals doing that. So once Google picked up that this was actually this and it's changed, I was back in the search results probably within like a month or 2. It really wasn't that long, but there was a lot of holding my breath waiting for that to happen.
I bet that was so scary because, like you said, years of work went to get you to that spot. And then all of a sudden you're like taking a big step back, which I believe in, in business, we talk a lot about sometimes you have to go slow to go fast because you can't just keep doing the same thing.
Exactly.
If it's not working.
Yeah, doing the same thing and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. So it's not going to work.
Yes, exactly. That's right. And so finding a way to make things better, to make things, click with you as a way of making it click for your readers too is great. And I think it's a great rebrand. And as a part of that rebrand, you also launched a podcast. Is that right?
I did. A few months ago now, I launched, a podcast. I'd been wanting to do a podcast for a while. I think one of my childhood dreams was always to be on the radio. I wanted to be a radio presenter and sort of never did anything with it. So when all these podcasts came out, I was like, I could do that. Because I think the thing that deterred me from being a radio presenter was I thought that my voice probably wasn't the best. But then I'm like, hey, anyone can have a podcast.
Exactly. I don't know what you're talking about. Your voice is great.
Thank you. It was, and I did want to do something along the lines of cooking, but I've struggled to sort of see how I could do it. I was like, cooking's very visual. But then I really reflected on the fact that all of the cooking hacks and tips that I have, I've gotten from talking to people. Like I'll ask people how they make something, or I'll ask people how they, what they have for dinner or things like that, just to find out some more information. And that's some of the best ideas I've ever had is just from chatting. So it doesn't have to be visual. And of course, in the podcast terms, if you are talking about something and you want a visual representation, you can add a link or anything like that. So it's been going really well.
I love it. And so, I'm curious about what a food-focused podcast would look like. I mean, you're not just sharing the recipe, right? I imagine you're talking about more of the tips related to a recipe.
Definitely. So my whole thing is shortcuts to success in the kitchen. So it's all about the tips, tricks, and hacks that will help you cook better and more efficiently. I am hesitant to share a recipe. Like I know some podcasts do, like they just take you through an entire recipe, but I, as a listener, probably wouldn't resonate with that as much. So I interview food bloggers who share, what their expertise is. So, I've had people come on to share, like Beth from Budget Bites. She came and shared about cooking on a budget, which was great. And people really loved that episode. So I think that saving money in food is always a good one.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's stuff you can talk to, right? You can say, this is the stuff that I keep in my pantry that's budget friendly. This is what you can do to save money at the grocery store. That's an example of one. And then I've had, people talk about all different types of tips and tricks. So it's been good. You should come on, Marley.
I would love it. Yes, let's get that scheduled.
Yes, definitely.
I have all kinds of. I love finding fast tips for the kitchen. For example, actually, this is one my husband came up with. It's just kind of a ridiculous one, but it really works. Like rather than hitting 10-0 on the microwave, just do 11 seconds, and you just have to push one twice.
I like that. Yes. That's definitely a man thinking, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yes. But it works. If you need 20 seconds, just do 22, right? It works.
I like it. Yep. Quick stuff.
Yes. But these little tips like that. I mean, that's such a ridiculous one, but it always makes me smile when I do that. And it just keeps those little things add up over time, and they keep things simple.
Definitely. And like, there's some things that people hold off on doing because they're not sure of how to cook things and stuff like that. So I think that it's really helpful. And like they're very short episodes, like 15, 20 minutes. So you can listen to it while you're making dinner. Doesn't have to be an arduous event, but then you probably leave having like one little thing that you can try in the kitchen this week.
Yes, I love it. And it's a way of your audience getting to hear your voice, which is nice, right?
Definitely. And, I've had a lot of people from my audience say how much they've enjoyed listening to other people and they've been introduced to other food bloggers. And I think I know a lot of food bloggers, but other people don't. Yeah. And so when you have conversations with people who aren't in the blogging space, sometimes you'd be like, oh, well, do you know this person? And they'll be like, no, I've never heard of them. And they're like, oh, well, you should have. They're very big in the food blogging space.
Yes, I know. How do you not know them? Right.
So, it's a really good avenue for people to find out more about their favorite food bloggers or to meet other food bloggers. So that's been really good too.
Yeah. And also, you have really just like took a dive into food, haven't you?
Definitely. But I'm making it sound really easy, but it was not.
I was going to, I know. I have a podcast.
It's like, just one day I, reached out to a bunch of food bloggers and now I have a podcast. No, that's not how it worked. Starting a podcast in terms of, I guess, like relating it to a food blog, it actually is easier than doing a food blog because, once you have a microphone and whatever you're recording in and the recording software, that's sort of all you need to do. You don't need to learn all the ins and outs of WordPress or something like that. Like it was quite easy in that terms and you didn't have to learn the food photography and things like that. But it still is something completely different. I had no prior experience to podcast editing. I had to learn all that from scratch. So I really did feel like just going back to the beginning. And also, like, I think it was at the start, I felt really scared about reaching out to some of the people that I was going to have on because I was going to be reaching out to people who were very successful. I was like, oh, why would they want to talk to me and that kind of thing. And so once again, that imposter syndrome came through and I think I spent like ages trying to like craft the perfect email and then sending it out. And because I'm in Australia, like, so when I sent it out, you guys are probably in bed. So I spent like all night that night, like sleeping, going like, oh my God, what are they going to write back? I don't think I had any sleep and that kind of silly stuff. And now I think about it, I had like pretty much all yeses and then some just too busy. And that's completely understandable.
Right.
But at the time I was so nervous. So I think that, I think we can all relate to feeling very out of our league sometimes, and I definitely did on my first podcast episode. And when it was time to publish that, I was still like, what if everyone thinks this is ridiculous?
Yeah, but I think, and like they say, the way to get over a fear of public speaking is to speak a lot. Where I think it's a tendency to want to avoid it, really, to be honest.
Definitely.
But in some ways, it's like trial by fire. You just like jumped in and talk about helping yourself get over that imposter syndrome. You just get in there, and then I don't know if you feel this way too, but as I talk to more and more food bloggers, I start to realize we're all just real people.
Yes, we all are, and even like some of the people who. I guess like the bigger people that I was talking to,
yes.
They even felt nervous about being on a podcast. So you just go that it's so silly that we just put people on a pedestal and think, whatever, everyone is just human and don't think otherwise.
Right. We're all just out here trying to do our best. And, kudos to you for being brave and taking that leap and putting yourself out there. That's great.
Thank you. It was scary, but now it's worth it. Like I have no qualms now. It feels fine, and I've had lots of lovely feedback. But it just those things. Sometimes it is scary to put yourself out there, and I think it's important to remember that everyone who is out there has had to go through that as well.
Well, I feel like we're kind of like taking this in a stair-step fashion because, you talked about rebranding and then a podcast. And then my next question for you is really about what about that leap of putting yourself out there on social media? Like I'm thinking of Instagram stories in particular. That can also be very intimidating.
It's funny. That's like the one thing that I've never been that worried about. Like, I don't know why.
That's great.
In a past life, I used to do like acting, not like acting classes in the high school and stuff. And I was in an acting school. So I think that part of that's probably comes in handy. I'm not that worried about the camera, but lives, oh my gosh, I don't know what's the difference. I think it's because I can't rewatch it before I put it out there, but I just feel physically sick when I do it live.
Oh my God.
And so yeah, I'll always stand there and be like, this is how you do this. What do I do with my hands? But yeah, stories wise, yeah, I just like to think I'm like just talking to a friend or something, and I don't make it be that daunting. But I definitely get that it's a terrifying point for people. Like I know a lot of people who won't get on the camera and show their face and things like that. But all I'd say is like people do like to see you. I mean, I'm such a huge Instagram stories watcher. Oh, it's such a time suck, but I love them.
Yes. It's so tempting to want to just be on one side of the camera, like let's just shoot the food or let's just show the food. But I do agree with you. I get a lot of, when I do share, a picture of myself or a story about something that's going on, I do get a lot of feedback from that.
Yeah, people like to know what's going on in your life. Like you don't have to share everything. Like that's your private life is private. But at the same time, like if you've got a funny story to share, or even like one thing that I like to do is like if I'm making a recipe that I have on my blog, just jumping on and being like, okay, I'm just going to show you guys how to do this and just try and do it in a couple of steps. And people seem to resonate with that as well because you can see how easy it is, and then you can go get the recipe and do it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Okay, so it sounds like you have a lot going on, and I'm just kind of curious what your blogging routine looks like.
I wish I had one. I'm one of these people who like I teeter between like so disciplined, like wake up, go to the gym, eat my breakfast, do my morning routine, that kind of thing, and then have my whole week set out and keep to that. And then other times I'm just like, it's all out the window and I have no idea what I'm doing. And at the moment, I'm kind of in between stages, like just having.
Well, you just got back from a trip, right?
Yeah. So trying to get back into everything. But I have been trying to batch. I'm not really like religious with it. I don't only ever do something on this day and that day. But especially in the kitchen, I know that you do a huge batching in the kitchen, Marley. That's awesome.
Yes.
But I just try and do like one shoot day a week. So because like if you're doing it every other day, your kitchen's a pigsty. You feel so out of your element. So that's what I try to do. And I'm trying to get better. Like I know there are some people who, say like just have a day writing posts and just have a day creating stuff in Canva or whatever that may be. But I kind of just like putting everything in a nice bow and then moving on. And so that works for me. So if I'm doing a post, I just do all the elements, put it together, save it, and then move on.
Yeah, I guess I could see that it does feel good to see something through to completion.
Yeah.
Check off that box.
It doesn't, the stuff that I'm doing like doesn't really take me that long. Like the stuff in Canva, I don't feel like that's taking forever. So it's easy enough to do that at the same time. But things like photo editing, I do try and do that in a big batch because that's something I don't really enjoy. So I just want to get it over and done with.
I totally get that. There are two ways of looking at this because, in my mind, it feels good to accomplish small tasks leading up to the big one. But I think Brandy Crawford with the site Stay Snatched, she does like what you do, which is one day a week. She does her photo shoots and videos and things like that. And I can see the pros and cons of all of these, whatever works best for you.
Brandy is goals. I see her all the time and I'm like, man, girl, you've got it all sorted out. And I certainly don't.
She's amazing. Yes.
No, I love it. And I see her and I'm like, oh, God, you're having a productive week, Brandy. Now I've got to get my butt into gear.
That's right. Yeah. But you know what? I love that because I think that encouragement, it's not like we're competing with each other. It's actually kind of like I see her doing something like, yeah, I got to do that too. Or you, or whatever. We encourage each other. Definitely.
Yeah, no, I'm not chasing after Brandy. She definitely encourages me and inspires me. And I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. And so do you use any kind of like planners or things like that to like editorial plan or to keep you on track, or do you just kind of have a mental thing going on?
I use OneNote on my computer and I just kind of have like a million folders in there. But, one will be like the biggest giant list of recipe ideas. Yes. I kind of consult to that every now and then. I just use my own calendar just on Outlook to plan things out. But yeah, I'm definitely like a type A person's nightmare. I just like my chaos works for me, but I understand that other people would feel very not very safe in my environment, and that's completely understandable. But yeah, my system works for me, and I feel very comfortable with it.
I love it. Do you do, everything on your own, or do you have people like assistants that work with you too?
At the moment, I do everything on my own. I'd love to hire out help. And, I have listened to people, sort of talking about that team-based approach. And I would love to do that. So it is something that I'm looking to. Probably Pinterest is the biggest one I want to get rid of. Ugh, I hate Pinterest.
Yes. It can be very tedious at times, and at the same time, I also feel the value in when you're that intimate with it, exactly what's going on. You're talking about being a control freak. I kind of feel that way about Pinterest at times myself.
Yeah. No, I think I've heard too many horror stories about VAs not being that good and whatever, and I'm like, it's a lot of money to. Anyway, I think that's the problem. That's why we don't hand things off, is because we start to doubt that someone can do a good job, but. I'm sure that's not the case.
So then how do you create work-life balance with everything that's going on that you have to do? Do you just work all the time?
I do, and it's not a good habit. I find like I do get burnt out sometimes, which is why it's really good to have a holiday, although I must say I worked on holiday as well. Not as much, but we all know we can't just leave our blog for a month. Like, it was never going to work like that. No. But what I want to do is get better at, and this is probably something that I see Brandy doing really well with her like Fridays off and stuff, is, actually taking time off. Although I don't know how well she's doing that either, because I see sometimes in her story she's in the kitchen again and things like that. But actually taking some time away from it, because I think that as a blogger, your weekends become about the blog. Every night becomes about the blog. And so when do you have that time where it's just not about the blog? So yeah, I want to get better at that, but I'm definitely haven't mastered it yet.
Well, and it's, like you say, mastering is a really good word there, because it's a skill that we have to develop. I think it's good to know that you can walk away from your blog for a Friday and it's going to be there when you come back,
For sure. And don't fool yourself into thinking otherwise. It's all going to be okay. And, if you need to check in on your analytics a couple of times a day, well, that's not really a big deal. But it's you don't have to be chained to your computer all day, every day. And I think we all started blogging in a business terms. Maybe you started as a hobby, but if we think about it as a business, we wanted that freedom. We wanted to be able to actually live our life. And so, it can't all be about the blog, even though we all love our jobs and are very passionate about it. There's other things to love.
Yes. Okay. So if you were talking to somebody today who said they were thinking about starting a food blog, what advice would you give them?
Ooh, good question. I would say go for it if it's something that you feel passionate about. I see a lot of people trying to discourage people from getting into the space, but I know a lot of people who have started in the last year and a half who are way more successful than me even, and they've found their own rhythm. So well done. There's still space for people, and there's still lots of room for lots of different ideas and recipes. So go for it. Take the time to learn about SEO. That was my problem. I think I was stabbing in the dark for a little too long. So get the help. And I think that investments in your blog, I still struggle. You go, there's a lot of money, but most of the things that you do end up spending your money on are going to be helpful. So if it's things like an SEO audit or learning about SEO, I think you guys have a webinar coming up, don't you, about keywords? Yes, we do. That's something like that would be so handy, because the minute that the light bulbs go off is the minute that you can make your blog the best it can be. And also look at what other people are doing. Don't copy them, obviously, but I think that if I paid more attention at the start to what other people were doing, I probably would have made my work more quality at the start, because I think I was going from the old school, if you just put a picture up and, write a little bit of a blurb and then put the recipe up, it'll be fine. But that's unfortunately not the case. You have to anticipate the user's needs and really think about the user and do those process shots, and it's all about that. But I don't know why I didn't do that for so long.
Well, like you say, it's easy to, like there was a day, then that's all we had to do. It's just put up a recipe and tell a little story and a couple of pictures and you're good.
Yeah, and I thought that was how it was always going to be. It turned out to be a bit more work than that.
It turns out to be that people really just are there to learn about the recipe.
Yeah, and they really don't care about what happened to you yesterday.
Well, and I loved it was Michelle Palin, I believe, that was on the show that talked about how, what really happened is Google Reader went away in 2012.
Oh, yes.
And that people were coming to our sites as a story. They would come back day after day or every time we publish a post. But once that went away, then people were just really coming in for that one time and then leaving. So that kind of changed the nature of things.
Yes. And that totally makes sense. And you're right. There was a time when people really they were just following a blogger. And so whatever they were putting out was cool. So that was really interesting.
Right. Yes. But now it's different. And you know what? We have to adapt with the times. And this is the times that we're in. So there we go.
Yes.
I love to ask these fun questions at the end of the interview. Are you game?
Absolutely.
Okay, so tell me about your favorite food.
Ooh, good question. Pasta, all of the pasta.
All the pasta all the time.
Yes, I just love pasta so much. I teeter around, but I just love a classic aglio e olio or spaghetti with garlic and oil. That's probably one of my favorites. It's just simple, but such a good meal. But I do. Any pasta, I'll eat it. That would be my death row meal.
I went to a restaurant once that had an entree called the Hot and Naked, and it was just pasta with, I believe it was either butter or olive oil and garlic, and that's all it was. Yum,
the Hot and Naked. But yeah, I'm up for it. Yum.
Yep. You're like, sign me up.
Yes.
But as long as the noodles are really good, they have to be really good noodles, I think.
100%. Yes.
Yes. I love it. Okay, so what's the favorite app on your phone?
Instagram.
I knew you were going to say that.
I'm an addict. Honestly, I actually hate myself a little for how much I'm on it. I'm trying to curb it because I'm actually addicted. Every time I pick up my phone, I'm like, wonder what's on Instagram. Nothing's on Instagram. Just let it go, Cassie.
Nothing different than there was an hour ago.
Exactly. So I once took a whole week break from it, which was actually amazing. And when I came back, I was really good at I'd post in the morning and then I wouldn't check until the night. And that lasted for maybe a week. And then after that, now it was all back on.
But how good did you feel about yourself during that week?
Oh, so good. I felt so good.
Yes. I love it. That's it's a great strategy. I mean, the world goes on. You can continue living without Instagram.
Yeah, it's amazing, actually. Everyone was still there when I got back.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. Do you have any time for TV or reading at all? And if you do, what's your favorite?
Yes, I love both. I've always make a New Year's resolution every year to read at least 12 books, one a month. And
that's great.
But this year I've doubled already, so I've been really getting into it. I'm trying to think of what I've read recently. City of Girls. You talked about Elizabeth Gilbert. I just read her new book, City of Girls, on my holiday, and I loved it. I love Elizabeth Gilbert. I was addicted to Eat, Pray, Love, and I've read Big Magic, but I really want to go back and revisit it. So yeah, that was a really good one for me.
Ah, that's great. I can't wait to check that out. I love reading. I do mostly reading nonfiction, but when I get a good recommendation for a fiction book, I love to read those.
I love reading the nonfiction, but sometimes after I've read about 3 or 4 in a row, I'm like, oh, I can't read one more person telling me how to live my life.
I need to escape into somebody else's life.
Yeah. So I've read a couple of those. Well, I was on holiday, so I read a couple of those and it was really good. But as for TV, I love all the things at the moment. We're watching A Good Place. We'd never watched it before. So
what do you think of it?
I love it. It's so funny.
Yes, it's a great show. It's very simple and you know what I mean? It's not very highly complicated. Let me say it that way.
Exactly. Yeah, so I've been really enjoying that.
So how can people find you online?
So you can find me at my website, cookitrealgood.com, or on Instagram, probably is where I'm most. And that's Cook It Real Good as well.
And also on iTunes podcasts, Cook It Real Good.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, search me there. And To your listeners, if you want to come on and share anything, any tips, please reach out to me.
Definitely. Cassie, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I had a really good time.
So did I. Thanks, Molly.
Thanks to Cassie Heilbron for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. If you want to learn more about Chopped courses, including the Smart Keywords webinar, go to chopped.academy and scroll to the bottom of the page where you can see the courses listed. You can also sign up for the Chopped newsletter to stay in the know about the latest episodes of the podcast. Thank you for listening to today and for your support of the Chop Podcast. If you've got a minute, just scroll on down the iTunes podcast feed to leave a quick review. That makes such a huge difference and helps this show get shared with more people. It's really important and I truly appreciate it. You inspire me, and I hope today's show is helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening and have a great week.